Sorry I have a dirty blender, but it's because I made a batch before you came. So it's just the same stuff. And of course, like I said, because I have so many gluten-free people who attend my classes, I chose just the rice waffles to serve, and then I don't have to worry about saying, well, these are gluten-free, these aren't. Yes, you have a question?
Is there any way we could have those two lights on? No, right here.
These two lights. I don't know.
Yesterday they were on when we were trying to look at the screen. Today they're off and we're trying to look at you.
Oh, well, I think only one of them has a light bulb in it.
There's a switch over there.
Ah, perfect.
Thank you.
That helps. Can you see that right now? Good. I can too. All right. So what you need? A blender and your ingredients and a waffle iron. That's the main thing that you'll need for this recipe, along with your measuring. So rice waffles, I was telling you why I enjoy them. First of all, I'll show you what they look like. If you couldn't see them before, I'll turn them over so you can see them. Aren't they pretty? Now, would you guess that something that light of color was 100% whole grain? No. Made out of pure brown rice. Brown rice. Yeah, that was whole grain brown rice. Whoops, I dropped it. I better make that up. I don't want to vacuum. All right. Anyway, they are super light and super fluffy, as if you put a bunch of baking powder and eggs in them. But they have all 100% good ingredients, which is amazing. In fact, every time I do these for a class, which I've only done twice in the last 3 years, people are just like, wow, I never knew whole grain waffles could be so light and so fluffy and taste so good. So anyway, let's try. First thing that you do, and this confuses everybody, but you start out with 1 cup of whole grain brown rice uncooked. Okay? Why? Well, what would you normally put in their blender? Usually flour or rolled oats, right? Is that raw or is that cooked? That's raw, right? But rather than go through the expense of buying expensive rice flour, we're just going to put the whole rice in there and let the blender make it flour, okay? But we'll add the water so it can blend it up at the same time. So we're going to put 1 cup of uncooked brown rice in the blender.
Okay, the recipe says cooked.
No, look at the top. The first one, the very first ingredient in the recipe. 1 cup of uncooked brown rice. I know, this is why everybody's confused. But there's both in here. So your first ingredient is your uncooked brown rice. Second ingredient is what? Somebody help me. Sunflower seeds. Okay, so we're going to put a 1/3 cup of sunflower seeds in here. And what's next?
Coconut.
Coconut. All right. We're going to put some shredded coconut in here. All right, what's next after that?
Flaxseed.
Flaxseed. All right. We're going to put 1 tablespoon of flaxseed in there. And you can use either golden or brown flaxseed. The golden will help keep the lighter color. The brown might tinge it a little bit, but you hardly notice. It's only 1 tablespoon.
Is that flaxseed already milled or is whole?
It's whole. Whole flaxseed. Now you can use already milled. You'll probably have to use more than a tablespoon because it expands when you grind it. So I would say you probably want 1.5 tablespoons of milled. But your whole flaxseed, the blender will do the milling for me. At the same time as it does the rice. No, those are raw. They're going to be cooked in the waffle iron. But yeah, they're raw seeds and they will be blended in the blender. So what's next?
Cornstarch.
Cornstarch. All right. We're going to put 1 tablespoon of cornstarch in here. All right.
Salt.
Salt. All right. We need a 1/2 teaspoon of salt.
So what kind of salt is that?
This is called real salt. It just happened to be what was in my cupboard because I ran out my sea salt. You can use whatever salt you want. I don't know if you've heard of real salt before. It comes from Utah, and it's non-bleached, non-demineralized. And so it's got little brown specks of minerals in it. But anyway, some people like it. I just happened to be what I had. Okay, next.
Maple or vanilla?
Maple or vanilla. Well, I didn't have any maple. Maple tastes really good in it, though, by the way. Maple flavoring is not gluten-free. They actually put a barley ingredient in it. So when I'm making it for gluten-free, I use vanilla. But if I'm not worried about that, then I use maple flavoring. If you look at your maple flavoring bottle, it will usually tell you if it has something in it or not. So if it doesn't say, you're usually okay.
The vanilla we usually get is brown. Is that?
Yes, there is brown, there's clear, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. You can use real vanilla, you can use fake vanilla, you could use the vanilla bean if you wanted to, whatever you have on hand, use. I use what's available in my local community. You can use what's at Kroger's, whatever. I'm not going to measure this because then I'll get my ½ teaspoon wet and then I won't be able to measure salt in my second cooking class. So you watch me dump. All right, next, water. Well, I have a measuring cup, but I don't have any water. Would somebody give me some water? Thank you. I need 1 3/4 cup. That's a 2-cup measuring cup, so that should be fairly easy. Now, I'll just do that.
Cooked rice.
Yes, cooked rice will be the last thing I put in. That's what's in this container here. The cafeteria was so nice to cook brown rice for me.
Have you ever used the millet in
The what?
it? Millet. You have?
Yes. In fact, I'll talk to you about that while he's giving me some water. You can use uncooked millet instead of that uncooked rice, and you can use cooked millet for the second thing that you'll need instead of cooked rice. However, if you use cooked millet, you will need to use less water because rice is thicker than millet. So if you're using millet, your batter is going to be a little more runny, and you don't want that. You want it thicker. So either put more millet in or cut down on your water. And I would suggest cutting down on your water because otherwise your blender will be too full. But I will say that millet waffles are even more light and fluffy than rice waffles. They're just a little bit harder because they're more watery. So yes, my mother is allergic to rice. So she makes this recipe with millet all the time. And she loves it. And yeah, she was amazed at how light and fluffy they were. Okay, so we're going to put our water in here. And then we're going to make some noise. And you're just going to have to bear with it. I'm going to turn off the mic for a second. Just remind me to turn it back on. You measure your 1 cup of cooked rice, okay?
Oh, you haven't put that in yet?
We haven't put that in yet.
Oh, okay.
Now the cooked rice, I don't know if you're familiar with waffles, but if you're going to make waffles in the blender, usually you'll put in your flour, your nuts or your oil or whatever, and you'll blend that, and then you'll add your oats last because they kind of thicken it. Well, your rice, your cooked rice does the same thing. So we're using cooked rice instead of oats to thicken the batter. So you have to put it in last because once you put that in, your blender ceases to blend. And you have to sit there and stir it until it's at least blended the cooked rice enough to get it nicely done. So we're going to put in 1 cup of cooked rice here.
So why don't you bring a Vitamix or some kind of super blender to your cooking class?
Good question. Why don't I use a Vitamix? I think Vitamixes are really nice, but I also think that not very many people in your community are going to own them. And so if you have a Vitamix at home, I encourage you to do what I did. And, well, actually, I went my first 3 years of cooking classes without a Vitamix anyway. This was the blender I used. But anyway, I bought this for $20 at Walmart. It is just a Walmart cheap 12-speed Oasterizer. That's all it is. And it's what most of your community is going to be using. So if they see you demonstrate the recipe in the same blender that they use, then it gives them hope that they can go home and make it. Okay? So you want to make sure that you know how to use a Walmart blender. And it's a different procedure than using a Vitamix, okay? You have to make your recipes a little bit smaller, blend them a little longer, and you have to learn how to use your spatula to help it blend along without dropping the spatula in the bottom of the blender. Right? Don't do what my brother did once and dropped the spatula in while he was making guacamole dressing, and the ceiling turned yellow. But anyway, okay, I'm going to just turn on this blender again, and while it's blending, I will add the rice to it. Okay, it's done. See, that wasn't so bad, even a Walmart blender. You can handle it. It won't be the end of the world.
What is a Vitamix? I don't know what you mean.
Vitamix is a company that makes a very, very, very expensive blender. It's about twice, well, not quite twice, probably 1.5 times the size of the jar. And it's strong enough to turn a block of wood into sawdust. And that used to be how they advertised them. They'd actually do it.
You know what? I just got one from eBay and I paid $35 for it.
Nice.
Just go on eBay and get them. And I actually bought 2.
The nice thing about it is
And it runs your
Yeah,
it can make flour. It can make really nice smoothie. Although I have to say, this makes really nice smoothie too, just in smaller batches. It's so powerful that while it's blending, it will actually bring your stuff to a boil inside the Vitamix jar.
I actually have one in my cabinet if you want to look at it.
But anyway, even if you have one, go buy a Walmart blender. You gotta learn how to use it before you start demonstrating and saying, ooh, this thing doesn't work. That's the last thing you want to hear your people say, all right? Now, the secret to making waffles is having a good waffle iron. The reason why I put on here, cook for 6 to 10 minutes, I should have put 6 to 12, because it depends on your waffle iron. If you have a cheap Walmart waffle iron, which is what most people have, it's going to take about 12 minutes for their waffles to cook with this recipe. If you have a really high quality, super hot waffle iron, it takes 3 minutes. And there's waffle irons with everything in between. So really you have to know your waffle iron and make sure that they know that their waffle iron is going to be different than yours. The ones I have is a Cuisinart waffle iron. You can get them at Bed Bath & Beyond. And it has adjustable setting from 1 to 5. And if I put it on 5, it would char my waffles in about 2.5 minutes. So I usually have to cook them on 3. But, so anyway.
So it's cooked in 3 minutes?
It's cooked in 3 minutes, yes. But anyway, test out your waffle iron and make sure that you know how long a recipe takes with your waffle iron before you go and demonstrate a recipe.
One of the secrets to
Come up here to the mic so you're recorded.
one of the secrets to these type of waffles, as opposed to maybe the waffles you're more used to making, is that they don't have any baking powder or anything in them to make them rise. The steam of the cooking process makes the waffle rise. So for one thing, you don't want to come over here when it's half cooked and pull it up, because you'll have half the waffle on the bottom, the other half the waffle on the top. Okay, but it's actually going to rise up nice and fluffy. It's also why it's going to be fairly important to have a hot waffle iron. We had an old, fairly cheap Belgian waffle iron. It would take about half a blender of batter just to make one waffle, and it didn't rise well because it didn't cook it hot enough for the amount of batter that was in there. So you might experiment. You might have to get a waffle iron that's going to cook it well.
Also, flaxseed makes it rise.
Flaxseed does help it rise. Now, I experimented with this recipe because 2 weeks ago when I did this class, one of the ladies in my class says, "I'm allergic to flaxseed." And I had pre-made a batch of waffles ahead of time for them to eat, and then I was going to do my demonstration. So I told her, I said, "Don't worry, I'll leave the flaxseed out on my demonstration, and you can eat the first waffle that comes off the demonstration." And she was really tickled at the idea. I was a little bit worried because I had never made this recipe without flaxseed before. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And so I did, and amazingly, they turned out quite well. In fact, then everybody else wanted to try one too to compare the difference. And anyway, we had no problem using up the waffles, but they were all gone by the time we were done. But anyway, so for the record, this recipe does work without flaxseed. If you don't have any flaxseed on hand, it's not the end of the world. Okay. I've also made this and accidentally left out the cornstarch. It didn't hold together quite as well, but it worked fine. So there's a lot you can do with this recipe, and don't be scared. Do I use it? No, and the reason why is because it's expensive and it's almost impossible for anyone in my area to get. Not because it's a bad thing. She asked if I used gar gum, and it's an ingredient that's used in gluten-free cooking in place of gluten to give it kind of a little more chew like the gluten has. And I'm not going to say it's good or bad, but just because it's hard for anyone in my area to get, I don't use it.
How do you spell them?
It's spelled G-U-A-R space G-U-M. And it's the gum from a tree. And you'll find it in ingredient lists on most of your non-dairy ice creams. That's what they use to give it that ice cream texture without actual milk in it. And so that's where it's mostly used. Yes?
So do you find flax seeds and chia seeds, are they available?
Yes. Flaxseed is available at Walmart and almost any grocery store. I was amazed, but it's actually true. And they sell it at almost all health food stores as well.
Chia seeds at Walmart?
Flaxseed.
Okay.
Chia seed is, let's see, how should I put this? Chia seed is something that if you've ever heard of Dr. Oz, he has been recommending for the last 6 months or so. And because of that, almost every health food store can now get it. Okay? So because of Dr. Oz, it's now much more available than it ever used to be.
What is she recommending it for?
Omega-3s. Chia seed is higher in omega-3s than even flaxseed.
Oh, really?
Yes. Question. Over here first. Do you have a question? No? Oh, you do. Okay. Yes.
What is the natural sugar content of the waffle you're now making?
Now that I don't know, but you could easily look it up because the main ingredient in this is rice, and so you would just have to look up the sugar content of rice.
But you put coconut in, correct?
Yes.
That would
Shredded
have, that
And
would
then
up
that
the
would
natural.
up it. That's correct. Yes. But those are the only two things that would have any sugar content at all.
Can you mix and match? Can you use dry rice and coconut
millet or
Yes.
millet into it.
Yes, I have done dried millet and cooked rice. I have done dried rice and cooked millet. I have tried all those and it works fine. Any other questions? Yes.
I did quite a bit of research on chia seeds. They're really good for diabetics, but if you have a problem with fluid retention, you have to be really careful.
Right.
It can get you into trouble.
You don't want any huge amounts of them. I don't go around telling everybody that they need to take chia seeds every day unless their doctor tells them that. Because chia seeds also, if you eat a huge amount of them, can be a little more of a laxative than flaxseed.
Are they more expensive than flaxseed?
Yes. Yes, they are. But if you saw the price of fish oil at the health food store, you would say that chia seeds were very cheap. I now work at a health food store, and I have people come in every single day for fish oil. And when I see them paying $40 for a bottle of fish oil that won't even last them a month, I say chia seeds are really cheap. And flaxseed is even cheaper. So I'm not going to complain about the price of those kind of seeds when I see what people are spending on other things. So that's something that you should keep in mind as well. Okay, we've got the waffles covered. Any more questions on waffles before we move on to ambrosia? We've pretty well turned to ambrosia already. Let's go ahead and do the ambrosia. This is the first chia seed recipe I've ever used in my life, and this was the first time I'd ever used it in a class. So it was kind of my experiment to see how it would go over and what people would think about it. Chia seeds are available from a number of different companies, but one that every health food store carries is Now. I'm sure you're familiar with that brand. They sell chia seeds. So if your health food store does not carry it, obviously I'm sure they order from Now. They can order it for you, okay? Because it's the same company. They make chia seeds, they grow chia seeds that are white, they grow them that are black. This recipe will work with either one. It's prettier with white, but I've used it with black and it's fine. And of course we talked about chia seeds. Chia seeds are high in omega-3, 6, and 9. So you've got a fair amount of nutritious fat.
Omega-3, 6, and 9.
Yes. And your omega-3s is higher than flaxseed by quite a large percent. So it's something that you know is going to be nutritious. It's not something that I take every day as a supplement, but it's something that I don't mind incorporating in my recipes once in a while because it's going to be something for variety and something that I know is nutritious. So I do know some doctors who are recommending chia seeds to their patients, and so if your doctor recommends it, go for it. Otherwise, I wouldn't take it every single day unless I had a reason to. But variety is important, and so I try to use variety in my classes. And so since in my area it is easily accessible, I decided to try it. It was my experiment. And I was quite shocked at the response to this recipe. In fact, I think of every single cooking class that I have done in the last 2.5 years, I've only had one other class that compared with the excitement and the lack of leftovers at the end of the class. And I taught this class in both of my locations and had the same response in both locations. They were just ecstatic at how wonderful it tasted and how amazing the recipes were. And of course I'll hear things like that, oh, the recipes were great. But when you see them, once the class was over, during the class they kept coming back for seconds and thirds. And when the class was over, they wiped out everything that was left and took it all home. And you don't always see that at a class, so that's a pretty good sign. It must have tasted good. So anyway, the recipe is very simple. And it starts the night before. It's one of those, you gotta do something the night before recipes. And I don't always use those kind of recipes, but this one, the taste is worth it. maybe if I clear up a couple of these things here, you can actually see what I'm doing. Before the
May I
video
ask you
gets
something?
too full. Yes, you may.
A lot of times when I make a smoothie, I use flaxseed in it. So would it be better to use this chia seed?
I wouldn't say better, but I would say you could alternate with it for variety.
Okay.
Uh,
Thank you.
anything that you eat 7 days a week can be harmful for you if you get too much. God created variety, and even if you ate, only bananas every single day, you would survive, but you wouldn't be getting your full nutrition. And so I tried to get some variety in my diet. Okay. Now I think you can see better. Does that help? You see what's going on over here in the center too? This chia seeds right here. Okay, so for the first thing you need is, oh, I already pulled it out. You need a quart jar, okay? I think most of you have one of those. If you don't, use a spaghetti sauce jar or an applesauce jar. They work just as well, okay? And this is the night before now, okay? The night before you're going to use the recipe, or if you wanted to use it the day of, like if you were making this for supper, you would do it the morning of, you could, or you can do it the day before is fine. And what you will take is 1 can of coconut milk. Coconut milk is available at any grocery store. I have yet to find a grocery store that does not carry coconut milk. My favorite is the Thai Kitchen brand, which Kroger's carries. But if you don't have access to it, that's all right. You can use any coconut milk you want. All right. So you take your coconut milk and you put it in the jar.
What's the difference between the milk and the cream?
Okay, we need to talk about that. There's 3 parts to coconut milk. There's 3 types of coconut milk, you might say, that people call it. There's coconut cream, like you said. There's coconut milk, and there's coconut water. Coconut cream is what you would find if you stuck a can of coconut milk in the fridge and let it sit there overnight. When you open the can the next day, the first 2 inches of the top of the can would be coconut cream, and the bottom would be water, right? Coconut water, on the other hand, is the actual water that you would get from a coconut if you cut a fresh coconut out and dump the liquid out, okay? That is coconut water. It's not coconut milk, even though people may call it that. Natives will use it. They will actually mix it with a little bit of sugar and use it as a rehydrating for electrolytes, because it really helps to balance your electrolytes. It's high in potassium, magnesium, and it will replenish your electrolytes. I find that really neat because, where it grows in the tropics, you're talking about an area where you would need replenishing of your electrolytes on a regular basis with the amount of sweating that you do out there. And so God created a tree that took care of the problem. Anyway, that's the coconut water. When they make coconut milk, they take that coconut water and they actually blend the coconut meat into it. And that's how they make the